Once upon a time, there was a legendary wrestling federation called World Championship Wrestling. You may know it better as WCW. Or if you're a WWE fan, WCW. It was a federation that was spearheaded into the limelight by two figures. Billionaire Ted Turner, the guy that runs a whole bunch of television stations like the now crappy TBS, and Eric Bischoff, the executive producer of WCW during its rise to prominence. On this episode, we're going to be talking all about what once was, what could have been, and basically all of the crazy things that WCW went through, all the way from its beginnings as a southern United States territory, all the way to Vince McMahon buying it for $2 million in 2001. I can't believe it was that low. $2 million? Seriously? Anyway, this is our special WCW episode of the Haymakers. Greetings, everybody. My name is DJ Calcos. Along with me is my usual host, co-host, Nickyv MLP.
Good evening.
Yes, and right now, actually, Toon Critic is not available for this cast. Unfortunately, he had to bail on us due to an emergency. Hope everything's all right with you, buddy. So, to fill in, my friend, local friend, the one I watched the Royal Rumble with, and oh my god, that was an experience.
Oh, man.
That was good fun.
You got to watch Royal Rumble with company? Ho, ho, ho. That must have been
Dude,
fun.
we were going nuts at that triple threat. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute, but my good friend, his name is Kirk. Yes, his actual name is fucking Kirk. That's pretty hardcore.
It is for the reasons that you all think it is.
But yes, this is Kirk. He's my resident WCW guy. If I have a question about WCW or anything like that, he's always the one to clear me up because he was super active in the product back when it was at its heydays. Tell us the story.
Back in the day, when I was merely a little high schooler in the middle of Maine, my mom did not believe much in cable television. So we had the most basic cable, because that's what me and my brother could pay her to pay for it. And what it came with was the basic channels and 5 other channels, which were basically the super stations. So amongst those was like a Chicago channel for whatever reason.
That's because WGN is fucking everywhere.
Yeah, right. But UPN, but also TBS. And of the few cable channels we had, TBS was the only one that actually had wrestling. So the only option I had to experience this new thing that I just found out about because of TBS was WCW, TBS, Thunder, and their occasional Saturday, like, the weird show where they show everything that happened during the week. I think it was WCW Superstars or something. I can't even remember anymore. I stopped watching it when I found out about Thunder.
But I watched that growing up on Thunder.
Yeah, no, no. I did expand it, but I didn't have cable. What happened was, about 2 years into really watching it, I found a friend at high school who was also big into WCW, and he found out I couldn't watch Nitro. So being the bro that he is, and I wish I could find him again. I haven't been able to get in contact with him in years. He would record Nitro, bring it to school the next day. I would give him back the VHS a couple days later, and we did this for about 1.5 years.
What a bro.
Yeah.
From what year to what year was that?
I caught Thunder pretty early in its lifetime, I think. Because it started in 98. I think I started watching late 98, early 99. So I watched Thunder up until Thunder ended. And I watched Nitro up until Nitro ended. Because by that time I was in college.
Alright, so that is Kirk's story. So let's start. Now, WCW had been around for forever, just like the WWWF. Yes, there were 3 W's in the name way back when it was a territory. Eventually, they shortened that to World Wrestling Federation sometime in the late 70s, early 80s, around the time they actually got the Intercontinental Championship. But WCW had been around for forever. They were a southern territory. Basically, they started where WWE ended, somewhere in Virginia or something like that. And they had a lot of stars. They had a lot of pulling power. Paul Heyman got his start there as a manager as Paulie Dangerously.
And funny enough, he managed Undertaker before he was Undertaker.
Yes.
Yeah, back when he was Mean Mark Calloway, or Mean Mark Callisis, or Cassius?
Oh, it means something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
It's okay. They also had Ric Flair, of course, for the longest time. And then he jumped ship to WWE and then came back to World Championship Wrestling. They had Sting. Sting was their big guy in the late 80s. And like a whole bunch of other people. I know Arn Anderson was a big one. God, Arn Anderson, spinebuster, yo. Holy crap, his spine buster! They had the Four Horsemen, of course, which is one of the most famous factions in wrestling history. And that's where Ric Flair really started to get his name. And they'd done that, and they'd been airing their programming on Ted Turner stations for a while. In fact, for 20 years, they'd been doing that. So around the early 90s, when their 20-year anniversary came up, Ted Turner, as a nice little 20th anniversary present, gave them a whole bunch of money and allowed them to start doing pay-per-views at a much grander scale. Because beforehand, they had stuff like Starrcade, Bash at the Beach, and Halloween Havoc was another one. But they weren't able to do monthly pay-per-views yet. They started sometime in 94, 95, when Ted Turner basically shoveled money into their pockets. And with that money, well, who did they buy?
They bought themselves a real American who fights for the rights of every man.
They bought that, but who else did they buy? Because Hulk Hogan's the most notable buy from the deal, but they also, in 94, they got a lot of talent. Like, can you guys name any more?
I remember Luger showed up the first Nitro.
Yeah.
They also got Savage. I think Vader made the jump. There was a couple of
They got Roddy Piper. They got Jim Hacksaw Duggan. They got a lot of people. Yeah, they did get DiBiase. That was in 96.
Oh, okay.
They got a lot of people from that deal, and they basically, Ted Turner gave them a blank check in 93, 94 to start expanding. And WWE in 93, of course, launched Monday Night Raw, which was the first program of its kind. It was live, it was prime time on the USA Network, and it was a completely weekly show, every single week. And that allowed WWE to further expand themselves and further gain limelight, because they were already the biggest federation in pro wrestling with WrestleMania. Like, WrestleMania was such a huge thing, and it was a very big risk, because if Vince McMahon wanted to take out the territories, he'd have to go through people like Crockett and Cornette and people like that. So WCW decided to fight back.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That space is for you two to chime in.
Oh. I'm sorry. I thought the story was going to continue. No. You had me enthralled.
So,
along with being an amazing singer, he can also tell a story like none other.
I know, right?
I was born on a dark and stormy night. So now
he's a sage.
Can somebody tell the story of how Monday Nitro came to be?
Ted Turner saw this and was like, I want to do this, and I want to kick WWE's ass at it. So, wait. Fuck. Kirk, can you tell the story better? I'm floundering here.
Goodness. I'll be fair. I probably can't. I told before the show, a lot of the politics and behind the scenes, especially early on, I wasn't big into looking up because,
okay,
you know, I didn't. Yeah. When you start talking about the shows themselves and everything that occurred during the shows and behind those shows, then I can chime in a bit more. But everything prior to, not as much.
Okay, so
I do know that what's his face? Turner went to Bischoff, who had just been hired as the executive producer of I believe their like non-live kind of shows, and we're just like, what can we do to compete with WWE? And Bischoff just kind of said something that he thought there was no way it could possibly get get approved and said, put me on Monday night alongside Raw. And Turner said, okay. And then he did. And then it happened. and then Eric Bischoff peed a little.
Yeah, their first show was in September of 1995, directly opposite Monday Night Raw. And Kirk, you mentioned that Lex Luger was on the first episode of Monday Nitro.
Oh, yeah, he just walked out like a smug little asshole, like, hey, guys, how we doing? Oh, no, I'm just here.
That set such a tone, though. Because what was Nitro doing in the early days? Well, they were spoiling the results of Raw, because Raw transitioned from a live show to a taped show, and WCW was able to either get a hold of the tapes, or they would send in plants to attend WWE shows, and then they would spoil the results of Monday Night Raw live on air.
Now let's hold on to that when we get to a lot of the downfalls, because that ended up kicking them in the ass.
Oh, we talked about that before, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I want to talk about it again, but yes.
Yes, we do absolutely have to talk about that again. That's one of those the day the wrestling died kind of things. So yeah, early on, Nitro kind of wasn't doing super well in the ratings, but it was also a brand new show with a product that a lot of people didn't know about. Gradually, they were able to build and find themselves an audience, and in the very early days, in early 96, Eric Bischoff did something that he knew would garner viewers among people that wanted to get into wrestling but found it kind of boring because it was just a bunch of big guys flailing about and moving really slowly. What did he do?
My favorite, this is why I got into wrestling. This is why I watched it, because one of the first things I watched was a Cruiserweight match. And I remember it was Psychosis, and it was Rey Mysterio, and so good. So good.
That is
Did you know that they had a Cruiserweight title for almost everything? There was a tag team Cruiserweight title, and there was a women's Cruiserweight title.
I didn't know about the women's Cruiserweight title.
Well, that's because they retired it the exact same year that they made it.
Oh.
That I didn't know. This is why you're on this episode, buddy. So yeah, Eric Bischoff created the Cruiserweight division, and of all of WCW's contributions to the wrestling world, I have a feeling that this one, alongside Elimination Chamber back in 2002, I think the Cruiserweight division is probably the most important because it showed to an American audience that hadn't seen Lucha Libre or strong-style Japanese wrestling that there are other things that exist. Eric Bischoff...
Even though he kind of stole it from ECW, but go on.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that Bischoff stole it from Paul Heyman, but let's face it, who didn't steal stuff from Paul Heyman back in the 90s?
Everybody
did.
Heyman.
As Heyman said in his documentary, Ladies and Gentlemen, My Name is Paul Heyman, Vince McMahon was also his best friend and also his worst enemy.
I'm still salty about that.
So yeah, that's what he did. So the Cruiserweight division got very, very over, and people were always excited to see them because with every Cruiserweight match, you were getting something a little different. You were gonna see at least one thing that you had never seen before. And even then, every match was always very unique. So in 96 and 97, WCW had the perfect trinity of a wrestling federation. They had story, they had the NWO, they had Sting, they had the drama with Ric Flair, they had a whole bunch of little subplots going on in the Cruiserweight division. That was very important because stories in wrestling can get kind of complicated, but if you have a mixture of short stories and long stories, you can have short stories for people that are just tuning in, and long stories that they can get attached to over time. The second thing they had was star power. As mentioned before, they had people like Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, they had Goldberg later on in 98, they had Roddy Piper, they had all of these people. And the third thing, which is the Cruiserweight division's contribution to the wrestling world, they had wrestling.
Go.
Like
What? You mean I can't just walk around slowly and give you a big punch? I mean, I hear that's a big thing now, is you punch people and they're dead.
Roman Reigns.
Hey, give him credit. He fought against Big Show, whose finale is also punching.
Why was that not just a boxing match?
Because they've done that before, and they never repeat themselves ever, Cena and Orton.
The Brawl for All. That was great. The Brawl for All. But yeah, that's what WCW's strength was. 95, 96, they were gaining themselves a foundation, and especially in 95 and 96, the WWE product was mediocre, because in 95, people wanted Bret Hart. People wanted Shawn Michaels. So Vince McMahon said, you're getting Diesel, and you're gonna like it. I mean, the guy in an era of hot potato championship reigns held the title for 10 months, and nobody wanted him to have it.
Holy shit, I just drew a parallel. Diesel, Roman Reigns, as to Shawn Michaels and Dean Ambrose. Because, like, at the time, Diesel was Michaels' bodyguard.
Yes.
And he was, like, protecting him on a regular basis. What is Roman Reigns doing for Dean Ambrose right now?
Oh, boy.
On a side note, who is the one superstar that most of the WWE fans want to see win the world title?
Dean Ambrose.
Exactly. So you take the guy who Vince wants to be over, and you put him with the guy who the WWE wants to be over, and it kind of works.
Oh, Kirk, did you watch Elimination Chamber?
Watch it? No. Did I keep up with it and find out all the results and watch the highlights? Yes.
Oh my god, Dean Ambrose actually got the pinfall. I was marking out so goddamn hard.
Really? I had a weird feeling you'd be marking out from earlier in the night when everyone else marked out on their Facebook.
Oh, for Kevin Owens. Yeah.
That was also a very mark out moment.
I did not think it was going to happen. But anyway, that's actually another thing to save for WCW later on. Actually, there are very big parallels with that. But there was a very big moment in 1996 that basically WCW with this moment was about to bring WWE to their knees. And I know you guys know what know what I'm thinking about. Big moment in 96. Bash at the Beach.
Oh, that wasn't giant airing. It was
Hulk Hogan turned heel.
Oh.
That was like seamless. Whatever.
Oh, that was the smartest thing the company's done in a while, or ever did.
Yeah.
Eric Bischoff. Sorry.
I was gonna say they have since tried to recreate such a feel with that same organization, and nope.
Well, it helps that the baby-faciest of the baby-face people ever, all time, forever, like, the one person you don't expect to turn heel was Hulk Hogan forever. And when he does, and when he when he turns heel, you're gonna go, I want to see what heel Hogan does. I've never seen heel Hogan. What's heel Hogan gonna do?
And the shift that they went with also made sense, because you have to think he had like a cartoon show. He's made all these appearances. He's been in the news. He is the big face with all the merchandise. So him getting spoiled in all Hollywood made perfect sense.
Especially since he was also doing movies not at the time, but like he had done a couple of poor movies, but still, it's a better justification than The Miz doing it.
Three Ninjas 4, High Noon on Rocky Mountain. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but it's kind of shit.
I can imagine.
But, like, one thing, if you ever watch a video of Hulk Hogan's infamous heel turn at Bash at the Beach, make sure to pay attention to his face. Because as he's walking down the aisle, he has that very distinct look of uncertainty. Like, he doesn't know if he wants to go through with it or not. And you'd think normally today, well, he kind of has to. It's his job. No. Hulk Hogan and a lot of other talents, people like Kevin Nash, had creative control in their contract. So if Hulk Hogan didn't want to do the heel turn, he didn't have to. And you can even see this when he's hanging out on the corner turnbuckle facing Randy Savage. He looks to the crowd and gives them a small smirk, as though, what the hell, I'll do it. So right up to that last minute, if he didn't want to do the leg drop on Savage, he didn't have to. The only time there was no going out of it was when he performed the leg drop, but he did. And then he cut this amazingly scathing promo in the ring, trashing everybody, establishing the new world order of professional wrestling, brother, while trash is being thrown in the ring and kids all across the audience are crying their eyes out. Oh my fucking God, what a beautiful moment.
Easily the best heel turn of any wrestler ever. I give a lot of shit to Hulk Hogan. Like, I personally think he's the most overrated person in professional wrestling history. But goddamn, that heel turn was beauty. That was just...
You know what? Having watched WCW for as long as I did, and again, I came in about the time Thunder started, so, Nitro had been going on for a while, and Hogan and NWO had done their thing. By the time I had tuned in, we were right on the cusp of the Wolfpack showing up. But I was never a big fan of Hogan. Like, by the time I watched him, I'm sorry, but the man had already passed his prime. He was just starting on that downturn, and I was getting sucked in by all these new, younger, exciting guys, and here was a guy that dropped his leg. I was not sucked into the hype when I started watching wrestling.
It's sort of like the people that just recently start watching wrestling and they're like, why are people booing John Cena? Why do people hate him so much? It's because of the years between 2006 and 2011. Right? That's why. So bad.
And I am going to note too, and I've always made this analogy. Is they always make the discussion, well, John Cena is a polarizing character. All these people either love him or hate him, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people who hate him make the sort of the Superman argument, that he'll always power out, that he'll always fight back and kick out no matter what, and he'll never lose, like, get a clean loss, blah, 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 even though he just did, which was amazing. But they say, like, well, he's a superhero, Superman character. Those never go over well. And then I point to Goldberg. Goldberg was a Superman character. He was. He was that never gonna lose, always power out, always, do these heroic feats and always survive. But he was over. I could never find someone who didn't think Goldberg was Goldberg. He was Goldberg. He wasn't like John Cena sucks. It was Goldberg. Yeah. If of all things, WCW did John Cena right.
It was weird too, because you're never gonna get Goldberg again.
No.
Ever. You didn't get Goldberg beforehand, and you'll never get him again. I don't understand why, but Kirk, I imagine you do. Can you explain why Goldberg was so goddamn popular?
Okay, so Goldberg was like with a lot of WCW, like the first half of WCW, and a little bit later on, they bought when they bought all these new talent, and they started getting like all these people in. They started buying a lot of new talent. Okay, now we've got these veterans in. Let's bring in all this new talent. So a lot of the time on Thunder, so I was very acclimated to this by this point, they would show out a lot of the newer talent on there, and you'd get people that were great with as new talent who would go on to do fantastic things. Sometimes you'd get a Sub-Zero lookalike who wasn't that great. But you know what? You have to weed through those. I'm sorry, Glacier, but no. So here comes this, it was, I think his first match was, no, it wasn't Bam Bam. It was Hugh Morris, who was a big guy. And here comes Goldberg. Okay, here's this new just guy. He had that MMA look before MMA was a big thing. Like, he looked like an MMA fighter. So he comes out looking like just a dude. Nothing too special about him. He's got the gloves on. He's got the bald head, and he's just got this look like, I'm going to kill someone. All right, well, we've seen this before. And he fights Hugh Morris, and he spears Hugh Morris. and there's some power behind it. And then he picks up Hugh Morris in that jackhammer and just holds him for a second, and then drops him into this like weird pinning maneuver. But in that second that he's holding Hugh Morris straight up in the air, you're like, the fuck? He should drop by now. And he lands him and he pins him and he just walks off. Nothing much really said. He just came and did his job. And the thing is, he did that every night. They didn't do like with fucking Ryback, where Ryback come in and always had to fight two people and they made a spectacle of it. They never made a spectacle of Goldberg's early few months. He would come out, he would beat someone's ass in an entertaining match. He would not squash people. He would work off of them, because at that time he was still learning a lot of how to do the wrestling, the showmanship of it. But he could perform, and he would learn, he would absorb. So he was wrestling instead of just squashing. But he would always come out on top, and he would always look strong when he did. So by the time you get to 3 months and you have someone who just comes out, beats ass in good matches, not squashes, you're like, we kind of like this guy. Let's cheer him on. And then they started a countdown, and he started a countdown. And you would count down how many matches he'd been going undefeated. And it became this thing where you just wanted to see him fight the next person. Because he didn't double up on people. He didn't fight Hugh Morris 5 fucking times. He didn't squash this person 6 times. He would go down the line. He would say, who's next? Because he wanted to fight everybody. He would beat everybody, and that was his goal. And you wanted to see him climb through, because eventually you knew he would have to get to the big dogs if he fought through everybody. And he was doing it. And you wanted to see that happen. And it was, you couldn't stand in his way. He would come in and beat your ass. And there was an impact to everything that he did. Oh, it was so good. So good.
I think the only exception to that rule would be that infamous Nitro match against William Regal.
Oh, fuck.
Well, yeah, but that match was kind of weird, because if you ask both of those guys, Regal will tell you that he was supposed to put on a 6-minute match. Goldberg will tell you it was just supposed to be another, like, a regular match that just was mostly dominated by Goldberg, like, not quite a squash, but over pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Which eventually led to William Regal just basically uppercutting him 700 times. But still. And I've actually heard some shoot interviews from both men on the topic. And I would have to side with Regal on it, because, like,
Goldberg froze. That's why I side with Regal on it.
Yeah, Goldberg, or when they went back to the locker room and Bischoff was like, what the fuck was that? Goldberg just hung his head down and was like, and basically Regal had to bite the bullet on it.
Yeah, that match was a big wake-up call when it came to Goldberg, because Goldberg had been involved in really quick 2-minute matches, but he'd never been in a longer television match, and it proved that he was still green as a shamrock. Very, very green. So they kept putting him in those matches, but they would also bring him to the power plant. And this whole time, Goldberg didn't give a shit about wrestling. He just wanted to get paid. So he would learn just to keep his job. That's the only reason why. However, yes, as Kirk said, he was always entertaining. People absolutely loved the guy. They loved his backstage entrance with the security. They loved that he would stand in the pyro and breathe in the pyro smoke. His spears looked like they hurt people, and they did, lest we forget Bret Hart. Like, Jesus. The guy was... I've never seen somebody get that over that quickly with such a simple method, and I don't think we'll ever see it again.
Well, they're trying. The WWE still occasionally tries to do that. Like down in NXT, they're still trying to do something like that with Baron Corbin. But the problem is, A, he's already lost once to Adrian Neville. B, all of his matches are basically squash matches, because like most of them are done in less than a minute, and like. He just doesn't have that same gravitas. Like he looks like Baron Corbin from time to time looks like he's scared to be out there. He's just kind of like, okay, here we go. Goldberg looked like he was about to rip people's damn head off. That's the big difference. Like, Goldberg knew the persona he was going for, and he personaed the fuck out of it.
It worked in his favor additionally because, let's be honest, at that point he was still working on his persona and his we'll say his talking ability. Being a silent killer worked in his favor to get him to like a bit more of that experience.
Yeah, that they didn't expose his flaws early.
They didn't make him quote Looney Tunes.
Thank you.
You know, I really like Roman Reigns now in his role as Dean Ambrose's supporter. I can tolerate him so much better because it's showing a lot more of his personality. Now they're not afraid to have him go out there and have light conversations with Ambrose and make funny faces. It all seems so much more natural that he's just this lovable goofball that can also kick your ass at the same time. Not to mention his in-ring work over the last several months has improved significantly. So the only thing Roman Reigns now is a heel turn, and Money in the Bank, honestly, is the perfect place to do it. So if Roman Reigns gets a heel turn, that's it. He'll be face of the company in 2 years. I guarantee it, and it will be great. But I don't know what they're gonna do now. The options there's a lot of options. We just have to hope they don't pick the stupid ones. But
yeah, we can't rule it out with this company.
Yeah.
Let's get back to that other company.
Yeah, let's go back to the other company that did make a lot of stupid decisions.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about Money in the Bank next week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Money in the Bank, June 14. It's going to be sweet, I hope. But the thing is, a big problem with WCW, though, even though the Cruiserweight division was one of its best assets, it was also one of its biggest problems. Because people in the Cruiserweight division would never move up.
There are a few exceptions. Like, do you want to know who has actually previously owned the Cruiserweight title? To give you an idea.
Chris Jericho?
Chris Jericho has.
Yeah, but he
Eddie
never
Guerrero
moved up.
did.
He never moved up in WCW. Neither did
In
Guerrero.
WCW, no.
Yes.
Yeah, he tried to, but then Goldberg
tried to,
put him in
yeah.
his place.
I'm talking about specifically WCW, but bringing up Chris... Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was saying that was a fair point.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, in WWE, of course, Eddie Guerrero and Chris Jericho were on top of the world at certain points, but I'm actually very glad you brought up Chris Jericho, because Chris Jericho, through no fault of his own, was very good at highlighting the problems the Cruiserweight division had, because the guy was chock full of personality. I mean, after 1996, when they started being able to hand him a microphone, he turned from Lionheart, always give 110% Chris Jericho, to whiny, complainy, bitchy Chris Jericho. And people loved prima donna Chris Jericho. Like, holy crap. And I remember he said, in an interview, if they give you a microphone for 60 seconds, that's 60 seconds of uninterrupted mic time. Use it. You can say a lot in just 60 seconds. And so they started giving him the microphone. And eventually they stopped paying attention to him. So him and the announcers would work in tandem to help get him more over in the Cruiserweight division. This is including, but not limited to, hold number 1, arm drag. Hold number 2, arm bar. Commercial break. Hold 734. Blah, 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 blah. And the commentators the whole time were bitching him out. And it was little stunts like that he was able to pull off because he knew that WCW Creative Control didn't give a shit. They weren't paying attention. They would just have him have a couple of shirts as merchandise and leave him the fuck alone in the ring when they didn't have anything else to do. So there came a point in 1998 when Chris Jericho was getting bored and he wanted to move up the card. He had the ambition, he had the skills, he had the talking ability, he had everything. The problem that he didn't have, the thing that he didn't have, that Diamond Dallas Page did have, was the support of people like Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash. Because again, they had creative control. If they wanted to stifle people, they could. Those cruiserweights can cruiserweight, brother. So Chris Jericho tried to get himself into a feud with Bill Goldberg, even to the point of mispronouncing his name and calling him Bill Greenberg. And the whole time, Goldberg eventually joined on, but he didn't do that to help Chris Jericho. He did that because he was fucking angry. So
yeah, and then he hit that one spear on Jericho that like launched him 12 feet in the air. Well, like 12 feet straight out.
Into the concrete, too.
Made for good TV, though.
Yeah, can't deny that.
Goldberg couldn't stand it. Because again, at that point, at that point, Goldberg was one of the big boys. He had been done graduating and going through the ranks of squashing people, and was now one of the top dogs. And he felt like Chris Jericho was a waste of his time, because Jericho was only 215 pounds. He was only 6'1" or whatever. When you have Goldberg, who's 260 pounds, 6'4", and or something like that. I'm kind of grasping numbers at the top of my head, but of course Goldberg was a big guy, and he didn't want to deal with the little guys. Same thing with people like Hogan. He didn't want to deal with them, and the announcers would do the same thing in 1998. The announcers would say, well, he's just a cruiserweight. He's tiny. He can't handle the world championship. And so people like Chris Jericho started to get frustrated. And eventually Goldberg nixed the feud altogether by squashing him in like 15 seconds and shit like that. And he just said, no, I'm done. This is bullshit. You're bullshit. I'm out. I'm here to play with the big boys. I'm here to make money. I'm not here to get you over. So Chris Jericho said, I quit. And he met with Vince McMahon and the board of directors and other people writing scripts in Stamford, Connecticut. And they did this really smartly, too, because he entered their building, shook McMahon's hand and everybody else, and McMahon would ask him about plot lines that they'd want to do for the other wrestlers, and Chris Jericho would, like, nod his head at every single one. And they were smart about that, because Jericho had contractual obligations to not go talk to WWE about entering WWE while he was still under contract. He couldn't do that. However, there was no rule against WWE talking to him about plot lines. So that whole meeting was all about getting Chris Jericho into WWE once his contract with WCW expired, and it worked. In summer of 1999, he was brought in, and the world was shocked. Now, in January of 2000, there were 4 other wrestlers that did the same thing. Can you name them?
Oh.
Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Perry
Saturn.
Saturn, and Dean Malenko.
Yep.
Correct.
The WCW were they 4 horsemen in WCW? I cannot remember.
The outside? No, not the outside.
They were the members of the LWO in WCW that they created because they were fucking fed up of not being pushed up the card. Because basically, by 98, 99, all of the cruiserweights, like all of them, were ready to be moved up the card because they had been there for forever and they had shown their talents and everybody loved them, but they were never moved up the card because they weren't one of the big boys. So they abandoned WCW for greener pastures in WWE.
Yeah, and it ended up working for a couple of them. Benoit and Guerrero got really over, won the title. Perry Saturn had a rivalry with a mop.
Too bad for you, Perry.
Such mop.
And he somehow got that over. Wow, impressive, Mr. Saturn.
Yeah. So I also want to talk about Kirk, as you said before. We need to go back a little bit and talk about the infamous night. There was, in 1998, WCW beat, it was fall of 1998, WCW beat WWE in the ratings for the very last time. Yep. And they would have beaten them again on January 4th, 1999. It would have happened, but a series of events happened that crushed everything.
Well, like so many plans that you think work, as they work, you tend not to, let's say, spell check them. So when in previous they'd be like, hey, you know what's gonna be on Raw's War? This is gonna happen. You don't have to watch it anymore. And for little matches here and there, that's fine. You know what? I don't really give a shit about these wrestlers. If you're gonna tell me the ending, sure. Why the fuck not? I'll stick here. But here's the thing. If you just let me know that there's gonna be a surprise win of like a fan favorite wrestler for the title, I might want to see it. Just might.
Yeah, if Farouk is beating Al Snow for the hardcore title, who gives a fuck? If Mick Foley is going to win the world title on Raw, there is the ever so slight chance that I might be interested in this.
You know, it wasn't. The thing is, you say ever so slight, but is 600,000 people ever so slight?
It's substantial.
It's slight in NBC ratings.
So I'm just gonna tell you right now, the ratings, if those 600,000 people didn't switch the channel, would have been 5.1 to 5.4. Well, actually 5.5, I should say, in favor of WCW. When they made that announcement on Monday Nitro, the ratings flipped 5.9 to 5.0. Both of those numbers are very respectable, but only one can win, and that was Monday Night Raw. That's like if CBS on Letterman, or now Stephen Colbert's show, whatever that may be, let's say they said, oh, by the way, Jimmy Carson's coming back from the dead and rehosting the late night show on NBC. You don't need to watch it because you know what's happening. Dude. All right, especially nowadays with social media, you can't say something like that.
Oh my god, if Twitter was alive back in 1999...
If Twitter was alive in 1999, those 600,000 people would have still switched, but Raw would have gained at least a couple million more viewers just from that alone. It would have been so fast that WCW would have lost so much traction just based on social media income that they would have died instantly. But there was something that happened on Monday Nitro that may have sealed their fate anyway.
I find it hilarious that the one of the greatest nights on Raw or in WWE history just happens to be the same night as the death nail of WCW.
Kirk, do you know what that is?
I just explained one. You explain this one.
The finger poke of doom.
Yeah.
So what was happening right now is that you had a feud between NWO Wolfpack, headed by a face Kevin Nash, and then you had NWO Black and White, headed by Hulk Hogan. And they were going to have a match for the World Heavyweight Championship, one that Nash had recently won because he stole it from Goldberg thanks to Scott Hall tasering him and ending his streak. They
made such a point the next night to be like, this is a full cattle prod.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. You need so much to put down, Goldberg. Like, okay, we get it. We're done. We're good. We understand taser technology. It's fine.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, it was still stupid, but go on.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is Hulk Hogan pokes Nash in the chest, he goes down, Hogan pins him, and then they embrace, basically bringing the NWO back together. And that doesn't work, because when you try to create something like that, manufactured, when the first time it happened, it felt so organic, it just doesn't work. All right, just to give you an example, Daniel Bryan, WrestleMania 30, compared to Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 31. Same kind of thing as far as pushing younger talent to overcome the odds. In Bryan's case, it was Evolution. In Reigns' case, it was Brock Lesnar. It doesn't work because one person is over, the other one isn't. So this was the same problem that WCW faced on January 4th, 1999, and they would never, ever beat Raw in the ratings again. So, 1999 just comes and goes, WWE gets some talent, ECW gets a little bit more money thanks to video games and a couple of partnerships, but thanks to Heyman's terrible management, ECW would close.
If I may, these were the years that we had the best fucking WCW video games out, though.
Oh yeah, WCW versus NWO Revenge, I forgot about that.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, and all we had was the fucking ECW video game, and it was the worst.
Oh no, you had a Raw PlayStation game, right? Yeah, that must have been fun.
It wasn't.
Or not?
No. It was kind of garbage.
It was kind of garbage, yeah.
So Well, WWF No Mercy was pretty great, but something happened in late 1999. WCW hired a new writer to act as executive producer in place of Bischoff. His name was Vincent Russo.
Yeah, him.
So
the powers that be.
Yep, the legend of Vincent Russo's reign in WCW has been spelled out by figures that are more knowledgeable than I or anyone else in this cast right now, but I'll try to sum it up as best I can.
You actually have his hire date in front of you? Like, do you know what day exactly they hired him on?
No, I don't.
Because here's something that always pissed me off, which I look back late, like, it was one of the few things I went back to look up because... Alright, so when you got a big name like Goldberg, you don't put him on Thunder very often. So when he showed up on Thunder, I took notice because, again, that was the one that I could actually watch when it aired. It was on a Thunder at the very end of 99. Around the time we were hiring Russo, that Goldberg had a stint with NWO, and he gashed open his arm, and he was out until, like, late May.
Yeah, in 2000.
Yeah, when they really needed the ratings, he was out due to a stunt that I can't remember if I looked it up or not, but about the time Vince Russo came in. So I always kind of blame Vince Russo for getting rid of Goldberg on my show.
So Vince Russo did not get his start in WCW. No. In fact, Vince Russo was a respected writer in WWE from 96 to 99. In fact, a lot of people don't know this, but Vince Russo invented Sacco. That was Vince Russo's idea, Sacco.
It seems like the simplest thing in the world, but just like, yeah, here's a sock.
Yeah, there were plenty of good ideas in WWE that were Vince Russo's. So Russo is a competent writer, but he has a problem. That problem comes in full force in WCW. So we'll start with the fact that he goes to WCW because they're looking for a new executive producer, and he's gotten bored in WWE. He's bored. So he wants to go to WCW to try and repair the brand. He's introducing all of these new cool ideas that the wrestlers can toss around and see what happens. The problem is that it involves pushing new talent, and the old guard has creative control. So Vince Russo stepped into a world that was no longer his, and he had no idea what he was doing, so he had to try to appease both camps at once, and they kept butting heads with each other. So this led to an infamous moment at Bash at the Beach 2000. Do you guys know what happened at Bash at the Beach 2000?
I believe this was this when Hulk Hogan and Jeff Jarrett were fighting for the title?
Yeah, it was a very infamous shoot moment that happened at Bash at the Beach. Yeah,
the bell rings and Jeff Jarrett just lies down. And it's just like, pin me, fucker.
Yeah, and the thing is, Jeff Jarrett had no real animosity with Hulk Hogan. Like, he was never talking bad to Hulk Hogan. He was just saying, you gotta pin me, man. This is what Russo wanted. So Hulk Hogan looks around a little strangely, finds Vince Russo around the ring, just shoots him a look, and he doesn't even go down to the pin. He just puts his boot on Jeff Jarrett and takes the title. And he walks off stage, and he just throws the title on the ground in full view of the audience. And Vince Russo grabs the mic and starts mouthing off at Hulk Hogan and swearing like a goddamn sailor about this. But this is so important because something that a lot of people don't know is that everybody bought it. They all thought it was a work in order to get Hulk Hogan off of television. Like, they bought it. Hook, line, and fucking sinker.
I could see how you could buy it because, like, I would imagine
it's so
that
absurd to have these three big names, these three professionals, all almost seemingly act like children, that you don't believe that they're actually acting like children.
It's wrestling, man. Their goal is to work us, and even when it's a shoot, sometimes it's a work.
Oh, but CM Punk did it so good.
Oh, yeah. He really did. Rippin' pepperoni.
Num.
So, Vince Russo, starting in 2000, he just started doing all of these ridiculous things because he was so fucking desperate to try and bring WCW back from the brink of collapse. And he started introducing all these crazy match types. Like, he was a big fan of the blank on a pole match, the most infamous one being Viagra on a pole match. Very, very interested in those. He was very big on cage matches and basically...
There's triple tier cage.
Yeah, the triple tiered cage, basically matches with really heavy, complicated stipulations. That would a lot of the times end in screwy finishes. It had no longer become about the wrestling, and it was about basically how crazy it could get.
You're leading me into something, and you better end with it. Come on.
It all really went to a head when Vince Russo, dressed up in hockey gear, won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship.
Oh no. As a WCW fan, that is not what makes me angry at my own brand.
Okay. I gotta hear this.
What was the one?
Because there was someone who won it right before Russo. Right before him.
Who was it?
It was
David Arquette!
David Arquette.
Yes!
There you go. There you go. And you know what? You can complain about Vince Russo. You can complain about him winning the title. But you know what? David Arquette held it longer than Vince Russo. Vince had it for a week. David had it for a week and a half.
I was expecting
you know what? Hold on, wait. Let me find it. Let's see. Number of reigns, combined days. Okay, combined days. David Arquette, combined days, held it longer than Vince Russo held the WCW title, Kurt Angle held the WCW title, and Chris Benoit held the WCW title.
Wait.
Whoa.
When did they hold the title?
When they brought the titles over.
Yeah, in 2001.
I forgot that those count.
Yeah, those do count.
It is still technically the title. It wasn't until like they combined them the first time and did the unification, and here, Jericho, here's your adoration that we should have given you before.
Yeah. So David Arquette, he won the championship because Russo insisted that it was going to be a good idea, but Arquette, being a fan of WCW and wrestling as a whole, knew that it was going to be the dumbest fucking thing in the world, but Russo wanted to do it to promote the movie Ready to Rumble.
Oh, because that was such a good movie.
Yeah, they wanted to promote it, but
dude, wrestling promotions have promoted crappier movies before.
See, Dennis Rodman, I'm sorry, not Dennis, speaking of Dennis Rodman, see, Dennis Rodman winning the championship, so long as he has a long stint within WCW, works. Because the guy, even though he's a famous rule-breaking basketball player, if you watch his matches with Hogan back in 94, 95, was a naturally gifted wrestler. He was actually really good at it. They trained him in wrestling for a little bit, and he was actually good. So if he were to win the championship for a couple of weeks as a celebrity, it works. But David Arquette was not a wrestler. There was no reason for him to do it.
And on top of that, like, first of all, same thing for Karl Malone. And by the way, that rivalry between those two was that was the best celebrity-involved rivalry possibly ever. Like, yeah. I know what you're thinking. Oh, what about Mike Tyson at WrestleMania 14? Better than Mike Tyson at WrestleMania 14.
No.
Yes.
No.
Because Tyson barely got involved in the match. He was just there as like the guy who was ringside, and then at the end he punched Shawn Michaels. No. Rodman and Malone got in the ring and fought and did good at it.
Okay.
Find me another celebrity that does that.
I really want to say Jay Leno.
Okay, actually, you bring up such a good point at Hog Wild or whatever the fucking pay-per-view was called.
Yeah, no, it's one where they had all the bikers outside on their bikes, and to be honest, it was smart when they brought in Leno, because Leno's like a car and a bike guy.
Yeah.
Like, He was known for that. So you surround him in bikers, and you know what? They're gonna rev their engines, and they're gonna create hype at that pay-per-view. The problem was translating that over, which, to be fair, Leno did as much as he could on his own show, and there was some bit of excitement for it. It wasn't what it, people wanted it to be behind the company, but it could have been so much worse.
It really could have. And the problem, though, is the result, because Jay Leno ended up going over easily. And there comes a point in time when having celebrities promote the brand is a good thing, but when you devalue the wrestlers that show up every single day to work and wrestle, you run into a big, big problem. When regular celebrities that don't normally fight or don't normally wrestle go over other wrestlers, you have a problem. When Mike Tyson punches somebody, they go down because he's Mike Tyson. But when Jay Leno punches somebody, they're a wrestler. They should be tougher than Jay Leno.
Yeah, and if they aren't as tough as Jay Leno, where does that leave them?
Exactly. That's the biggest problem. And that's the thing that Carl Malone and Dennis Rodman didn't have, because they were both tough guys. But then you have in 2000, just jumping the gap right here, you have Scott Steiner.
The big bad booty daddy.
Big bad booty daddy. Fat asses, no simpy.
Okay, say what you want about Scott Steiner. I could listen to him talk all day. Like, give Scott Steiner a microphone and let him just
There's so many reasons why WCW sucks.
You know what? The thing is, though, you put him on commentary, he would make more sense than Booker T.
Oh no!
Quack, quack, ducky, ducky, nun.
He's now one
harder because it's true.
Oh no! Oh, I feel so bad for you, Booker T, man.
He was so much fun to watch, and I really didn't want to listen to him.
Yeah. Dude, and it makes perfect sense on paper to put Booker T on commentary, because he was a big promo guy. His promos were fucking great. He had a way of speaking that nobody else could replicate, but now that he's on commentary, ugh.
Yeah, it sounds like he has brain damage.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I'm not gonna lie.
Ugh. The commentary in WWE is so up, down. Like, sometimes it's fucking awesome, but a lot of the times it's absolute bottom of the fucking barrel. I don't understand.
I was about to say, most of the commentary team sounds like they have brain damage most of the time.
I don't know, but the originator of that was Terry Schiavone, or I forget his name.
Kirk, help.
Tony Schiavone or something like that. What was his name? I'm going.
This I will note is one of the issues with WCW, because they they cycled through so much fucking talent. Oh god.
Yeah, it was Tony Schiavone.
Schiavone?
Yeah, he was basically the guy. Like, there's a very famous GIF, and I'll try to look for it and put it in the video. But there's a very famous GIF of a spectator behind Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan, and he points to Bobby Heenan, raises a thumb up, then points to Tony and just gives a thumbs down, and I'm just like, that accurately represents early WCW.
Yeah, okay, I know. Yep. I know which GIF you're talking about, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Where would this world be without GIFs?
Oh, it'd be a darker world.
I don't know, man.
But okay, there is I'm not sure if there are any other points you wanted to get to.
I don't know.
What about Sting?
Oh, well, Sting, yeah.
Crow Sting.
Yeah, we never talked about Crow Sting.
Oh god. There were a few things though that do, like, as someone who watched WCW and enjoyed it from, like, near its beginning, like, 98, when it hit Thunder, to where it, like, ended, which, to be honest, feels a lot longer than just a couple of years. But, like, they really weren't on TV for that long, comparatively. But they made an impact in that time. But in that time, there are a number of things that I remember very clearly about the product. One being that they didn't talk a lot. Like, Raw starts out almost every fucking show with 30 minutes of people having a discussion full of exposition, and we're either going to pander to you guys in the crowd, or we're going to tell you guys to go fuck yourselves. Let's see which one we're going to do now. And at some point, we have to mention Daniel Bryan, just so you guys know that he's still alive.
Thanks.
But Nitro and Thunder, if they had someone talking, it wasn't for that long, and there are many times where they just started with a match, and then maybe they would get to like some exposition about a storyline. But they usually did start with wrestling. And I felt there was, especially when it switched over to Raw a lot, I felt they wrestled more on WCW than they did on Raw. Raw was more focused on like the drama, where WCW kept throwing, because they had so much talent, they're like, well, let's just throw out all this talent and kind of see what happens, which meant we saw a lot of wrestling, which sometimes was fantastic. Like, we would get the Goldbergs, and we would get, Fit Finlay was fun to watch. We'd get the Dean Malenkos, we'd get the Chris Benoits. We also sometimes had to deal with the Norman Smileys. But you know what? Sometimes they were fun to kind of like, oh, that's nice, that's cute, okay, that's cute, move along. But you always knew that there was going to be a Cruiserweight match too, if not one or two. And that's always what proved to me that they were focused on wrestling, because especially if you put Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman in a match, you knew it was going to... I cannot find a bad match between them. There was a favorite one that involved two physical rings being present, and both of them working off two rings. Two A-plus Cruiserweight wrestlers had two rings and tons of space to work with, and fuck did they ever!
That was War Games, right? War Games was the pay-per-view with two rings.
Like, yeah. And but that was a big thing. Was like I always felt like I would find a better wrestling show with WCW. And then Russo came in, and Russo wanted to continue to spice things up, such as, hey, we now have Sid Vicious, who is fantastic. He is our champion. Well, let's strip him of championship for a reason. Okay, he's champion again. Well, we're going to strip him again for a reason. Okay, well, he's going to fight for his championship back. Oh, you know what you should do? Me, Vince Russo, is telling you, you should try more aerial moves, Sid. That goes over great. All right, I'll do that, even though I think it's a horrible idea. And I'll injure myself.
Beautiful.
With all of that compounded in...
Who would have thought that getting rid of Eric Bischoff would lead to somehow going even worse?
I don't know, man. In 2001, in March, WCW aired their last pay-per-view, Greed, with Scott Steiner featured prominently on the cover because he was the last A-lister that they had. He was the last one.
Yep. Goldberg was still on injury.
Yep. They were... they had nobody, so they turned to Scott, a guy that...
Jarrett had already bailed, which was epic to watch, by the way.
Yeah, that was pretty great. So, the thing is that they were in turmoil because AOL had started doing a merger with Ted Turner's companies, so they were going to own the rights to TNT programming. And Thunder had already gone by then, and the thing is that they bought it, they started the merger, and now they owned it. But the thing is that people wanted to buy WCW for a lot of money because WCW was still pulling in pretty good ratings and it was still worth something. The problem is nobody wanted to put it on TV anymore. Nobody wanted to put it on TV because they didn't want fiascos to happen again. So nobody was willing to buy it, and WCW was just going to die. Like, it was just going to go away. The championships were going to be revoked. Everybody was going to be left without a job. It took Vince McMahon to bring them down to like $2.5–3 million. He bought WCW.
Which, by the way, this is something kind of insane. The amount that that Vince McMahon bought WCW for was less than the amount of Goldberg's contract. Goldberg.
Yeah, that's
and
how
he
much
was able
they
to
were
buy
paying.
Yeah.
And they refused outright to buy Goldberg's contract.
Yeah, Goldberg didn't sign on.
Yeah, he was injured, and he was like, "Oh, they're selling it. Well, I have a new job." What?
Yeah, they didn't
But
bring him
I'm
on until
Goldberg.
2003. The thing is that Vince McMahon didn't buy WCW so he could extend the brand and bring it on TV again. Because at this point, Vince McMahon was the king of the wrestling world. He owned wrestling because ECW was gone. He had bought ECW, and now WCW is gone, which means in March, April of 2001, he became the sole owner of large-scale wrestling in America. Not counting AAA or New Japan. It wasn't until later when things like TNA and Ring of Honor started showing up that there were real alternatives. So Vince McMahon owned wrestling, and he bought it for the tape library because he knew that the WCW tape library was going to be worth a fortune. So he bought it. And I remember hearing a story about Chris Jericho learning how much that Vince McMahon bought it for, and he was like, "Son of a bitch! I wish I knew. I would have bought it."
And did you ever see the Nitro episodes leading up to that purchase?
They were probably really ridiculous. I don't.
They one thing I remember regularly was they tried to calm the fans by having this empty seat at ringside, saying that the new owners would eventually be showing up in that seat. Who was it gonna be? And they hadn't finalized any purchase yet. They just had an empty seat. They're like, "Oh, we're talking to people, and whoever's selling it will eventually sit in this seat."
And Nitro's last show was simulcast on Turner Network Television and USA Network, and their last show was shown at like a frat boy vacation spot, and there were a whole bunch of people that were fucking wasted and didn't know what the hell was going on. So it really spoke volumes of just how far WCW fell. They started in a mall and they ended in one. And that is so sad. And they used the final episode of Raw to start a plot line with Shane McMahon having bought WCW from under his father's grasp. And the final match was Sting versus Ric Flair. They signed off for one final time, and WCW died. Or did it?
Dun dun dun!
The reason why I say that is because no, WCW Monday Nitro or Thunder never appeared on the air again, but WCW's influence was still felt throughout the world for many years to come. For one, Eric Bischoff was brought into the brand in 2002 as the general manager of, I think, Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, he was, and oh my goodness, was it so nice to see Daddy Bischoff again. Oh, that made me so happy.
He did really well as general manager for a couple of years. He introduced the randomness of that match type wheel, which was completely random. Like, every single spin was a shoot, because, of course, Raw was live. And then you have 3-minute warning, which was very...
Oh, I missed that.
That was so cool. And, of course...
Rest in peace, Jamal.
Yeah. Well, seriously, rest in peace. Wow. Okay. I didn't expect you to go down so quickly. And he reintroduced...
Well, he turned into a MAGA.
Oh.
Yeah, he had a 3-minute warning, at least.
And then he introduced a concept that for right now has its own pay-per-view, Elimination Chamber.
Yep.
Like, only Eric Bischoff could come up with something like that, and it's such a shame that they had to fire him. I don't know why, but they did, and then TNA brought him on. But, and not to mention, it's not even just Eric Bischoff, it's just the way they had to unify the WWF and WCW titles in December 2001. Chris Jericho unified them, and that lasted until late 2002 when Brock Lesnar won them, and then they had to split it so that way they could do the brand split for SmackDown and Raw. Yep. And the World Heavyweight Championship had been around in one form or another all the way up until a year and a half ago when Randy Orton unified them at Tables, Ladders, and Chairs, which are now permanently unified. Now, the biggest stamp that WCW left was probably at WrestleMania 20. WrestleMania 20 was such a big deal because it started with Chris Jericho unifying the titles, but WrestleMania 20, as Zach said on an earlier episode, was basically the pay-per-view that said, WCW Cruiserweights, your time has come.
It was all centered around Chris Benoit winning one title and Eddie Guerrero retaining the other. And on top of that, it was Bill Goldberg's final match in the WWE. Let's see here. I'm looking through the card right now. Chavo Guerrero won the Cruiserweight title. There was a lot of WCW influence that shaped the WrestleMania 20 card. And it was culminated in the Benoit Guerrero moment at the end of the match when they held the titles together.
I think we can end it there. That right there cemented WCW's legacy, and they were around in one form or another all the way until a year and a half ago. And WCW, even though it's filled with bullshit, is also filled with a lot of great things that cannot be ignored. It's honestly the same thing with ECW. It's filled with a lot of bullshit, but it's also filled with a lot of great things that cannot be ignored. And so we have to remember WCW for what it was. It broke new ground. It did a lot of things that other promotions were not willing or able to do. But ultimately was destroyed from the inside out by terrible management and ridiculously strong egos.
Never forget, Hogan is an asshole.
Any last words, Kirk?
You're
the WCW guy, so I think it's only fitting that you end it.
I feel if we're getting to the end, I should at least share some of my favorite WCW moments as a young viewer who watched it all the way through. And while I've covered, the Cruiserweights, which will always be like some of my favorite matches, no matter what. Like if you just put them like in a shuffler machine, like okay, we're gonna watch this one, I would be just as entertained. But they were great matches, and not so much angles, but just great matches that I remember. There was a one for the now vacated tag team championships, and this was the Thunder match. So it's one that I got to watch, and it was NWO versus Malenko and Benoit, and all signs point to NWO winning. Benoit came off the top of the steel cage with one of his flying headbutts, and I remember standing up, like in my room, screaming at the TV, just so excited because it looked so amazing. I was always entertained by Perry Saturn because I always thought that he always put on a solid match. Like he would goof up, but he usually looked pretty good. We can't forget about the hilarity that is most of Buff Bagwell, Buff Daddy. We can't. Let's see. There's always Norman Smiley, who came out with with Pepe, the horse, one of those riding horse things. The fact that they had all this talent that they would occasionally show off but never really use. Usually for a lot of the Four Horsemen stuff, they would be like, here's Arn Anderson. He might wrestle one day. Here's the big thing. Here's the big thing that always I will point to as why sometimes WCW did things better with the same story. When Rey Mysterio won the title in WWE, for the longer extent, he was consistently the underdog because he was a small guy, and they put him against bigger guys all the time. Every time he was the champion, they put him against like Big Show and like Lesnar and just the big giants, and they always made it that. And he was always like, somehow he's gonna beat these giants. It was gonna be in WCW. When he did start getting solid pushes, he would get actual matches first off. Like the match with him and Goldberg, that one's really fun. Him and DDP, that one's really fun. And when he did fight the Giants, it was for a month. And the reason he did was because Kevin Nash had demasked him the night before, and he was without his signature mask. He came out, Nash picked on him for a bit in the ring, and then out of nowhere, Mysterio pinned him, and everyone was excited, and they got a rematch. And for that month, they had him fight giants. And yeah, it was very much David and Goliath, but as soon as he beat Nash again, they were done with it. They didn't overextend their welcome. But WWE is so far up their ass with their big guys that even if the little guy, if Rey Mysterio is popular amongst the masses, no. Until he loses that title, he has to fight only giants. And we have to make it giant matches. And he needs to somehow beat them with the shitty fucking signature move that we gave him when he came to the WWE, because he can't have a Hurricane Rana as a finisher. No, that makes too much sense and it's too awesome. No, he needs to have something stupid through the rings at 619. Okay, I'm calm. I'm good.
For the record, the 619 is one of the dumbest finishers. Can't they have given him the springboard backflip DDT?
Can't they give him any other Lucha Libre move? But, all that being said, WCW had good matches. And when it was about the matches, they were almost always solid. They never overlasted their welcome. And I can say, like, really, they made all their errors were not to their talent. Their talent, who they had, who wrestled, what they did was great. It was the writing, the people behind the scenes, and the stupid decisions that they made. It had nothing to do with the talent, because the talent is what kept me watching.
Well said.
Thank you.
All right, guys, this looks like to be the end of this admittedly really long cast, but we've had fun throughout, so it's no big deal. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that dilly-dally stuff, and donate to our Patreon if you're feeling kind of generous. But until next time, stay classy. Next week, of course, is Money in the Bank. Money, 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 money. Oh, can we ditch that song, please? It's so goddamn annoying.
All right, well, let's just use Shane O'Mac's song. It's not like we're using it for anything else.
Ching, ching, bling, bling, dollar, dollar.
You ain't talking money, then you talking don't matter.